and welcome back to Map the Maze. So this is the last of the mindsets, and the one I wanted to talk about today is possibly the hardest, although the others aren't easy, but this is hard: forgiveness. I know I've talked a lot about forgiveness, and I think from my perspective, there's the obvious level of forgiveness, which is forgiving the other person in your separation or divorce. But what I see a lot is people needing to forgive themselves, that people will often beat themselves up quite a lot in the mediation about decisions they should have made, or I should have noticed this sooner, or I should have done something different. And the reality is, none of that helps. That people made the best decisions they could with the best information they had, with the resources that they had in themselves and externally at the time, and that we can't go back and beat ourselves up. We can make better choices going forward and find good ways to make those choices, but not forgiving yourself for making bad choices in the past doesn't help in mediation. So what I would say is that, from my perspective, a forgiving mindset is one that is really helpful to have in mediation. If you go to court, you can do, salt the fields and burn down the crops. But if you're coming to mediation, that sort of take no prisoners, we're going to count up and tally the scores, doesn't help. That if that is the type of process you're looking for, then mediation won't address that need. That if you're coming to mediation, it really is about finding a way to move forward, about acknowledging that everybody's had a hand in this. We don't talk about how much of a hand, but that this is an interaction that hasn't worked. And so just as everybody is responsible for the interaction, everybody is now responsible to find the solution. And that mindset is a much more, from my perspective at least, constructive mindset to go into a mediation with. I think one of the challenges is that if you don't come in with a forgiving mindset, you may still get to a resolution and you may be able to put arrangements in place. But certainly one of the challenges will be the amount of time that is used to focus on the bad choices, the bad actions, the bad behavior of usually one party, sometimes both, but usually it's one person who wants to focus on those aspects. And the problem is this: it doesn't make people more negotiable in general. So it doesn't get a better result in the end, that it doesn't make you feel more creative or better able to explore options. So that's a challenge. And then it can take a lot of time. So I've definitely seen mediations derail because one person continues to focus on the negative, continues to focus on what the other person did wrong, how bad this was, what the impact was. And all of that may be valid. But the challenge is it going to advance you in the mediation or not? If you're in counseling, absolutely. I'm not a counselor, but it seems like that would be an appropriate place to really go in depth. Mediation is not that place. And I think that for some people, not being able to forgive themselves gets translated into, I can't forgive you either. One of the things that I really love about forgiveness, that I definitely have learned later in life, is from the work of Fred Luskin, so Forgive for Good, where he really talks about forgiveness is empowerment, and it's about empowering yourself. That if somebody has hurt you, if somebody has behaved badly towards you, they don't have your best interests at heart. So why give them power? Why continue to let them make you feel bad? That they can make you feel bad when this happens. But if you're now feeling bad 5 years later, you are giving somebody else power over you. And what he really talks about is reclaiming your power. So that message of empowering yourself to be responsible for how you feel, to free yourself from these past hurts, maybe even without ever telling the other person that they've been forgiven, I think is really helpful. I would also recommend his book because he talks about self-forgiveness. He actually has a whole chapter about how do I forgive myself, which I really appreciate because I think that is hard. That I remember when I was growing up and we'd go to mass and I would be taught about forgiveness and how important it was. It was never about how to forgive myself. That was not part of the equation. It was always about forgiving others for wronging you. And I think sometimes we can lose sight of the fact that we can be our own worst critic and our own worst enemy, and we can beat ourselves up a lot more than somebody else can. And so I think practicing forgiveness, getting into a mindset, is really positive, is really helpful for mediation and for life, but for mediation in particular. And so if you haven't read Dr. Luskin's book, maybe have a think about it. I've definitely done a couple of podcasts on Map the Maze around forgiveness, just because I think it is such a critical issue. But definitely, as the last of the mindsets for Mindset Month, I think forgiveness is a really important one. So just to recap the mindsets we had, and I actually can't even remember what they all were. Oh, the first one is curiosity. So being conflict curious, definitely come in with more questions than answers, and you will get to a resolution. Be hopeful. Know that this mediation is a process, but it's a way to get from where you are now, which is possibly a present that is not pleasant, that is not comfortable, that you're not happy in, to a future where you can thrive. That hope is the bridge that will get you from today to that future. Patience, which we talked about last week. So patience is oxygen. Patience gives you more energy and capacity in a mediation to focus on what is important. And this last one, which is forgiveness, which is beyond even just forgiving the other person, is also about forgiving yourself. And I think that really is a message that I would like people to think about. If you're listening to this podcast, think about, what do I continually beat myself up for? I'm not suggesting that people need to make bad decisions and then let themselves off the hook. But what I am talking about is where people have made decisions, made choices, behaved in a certain way, and months and years later are continuing to beat themselves up for those choices. There's no utility in that. Recognizing it's a bad choice, great. Figuring out how to do better next time, perfect. But beating yourself up, there's no utility in that. And it also, from my perspective, will make it harder on people to mediate. So those are my top 4 mindsets. If you're mediating, think about how they might be able to help you to achieve your goals, which at the end of the day is the important thing. So take care, and I will see you next month with a new topic.